What's Trending, presented by Feastbox, donating 10% of every order to Full of Hope, a charitable organization that feeds hungry families. The key for the BYU offense this week, I think, is just to show that they are where we thought they would be in week one, to get back on track.
Like anti-Dennis Miller, we are who they thought they were, and we let them off the hook. No, we're going to let them on the hook.
All right.
This week.
So with that in mind, with BYU only scoring 14 points against Sam Houston and so much emphasis being placed on, well, what is the offense going to do to rectify this thing? How is Keaton Slovis going to look in game number 2? Will these two best receivers be back in the lineup? And if they're not, how does the offense get going? Is the offensive line going to play better? I know Trevor Maddich cares a lot about that this week after what he said on Monday. Jarom, in your opinion, what does BYU's offense need to do against Southern Utah for you to feel like, indeed, the offense is back on track?
Score points, man. 40-plus. Got to get in the 40-plus range. Obviously, I'd love more, but you got to at least get to that number against Southern Utah. I would like to see 500 yards. I would like to see 6 yards a carry. I would like to see 8 yards per pass. I would like to see 10-plus explosive plays. That is 15-plus yard pass, 10-plus yard rush.
They had one against Sam Houston, right?
They had two. They had 4 rushes, 2 passes. I am not holding this BYU offense to a different standard based on game one. I'm holding them to the preseason standard here of what I expect them to be. And so I'm basically chucking the Sam Houston game out a little bit. I'm going to ignore it a little bit because I think in this game, this is a confidence game. You've got to play well. You've got to win big. You've got to make some really nice plays. Like if the BYU defense gave up like 21 in this game, but BYU got to 50, great. I'd almost rather see that than another underwhelming offensive performance, but a shutout. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if I have to emphasize one side of the ball, and I think we're all in on offense this week. The defense showed it did a really nice job. It will certainly be tested in a different way starting next week against Arkansas. But that's what I need to see. I'm not keeping the standard low. I need BYU to stay healthy, stay thirsty, and let's see some points, baby.
To explain what I want specifically, let's examine the past of the BYU offense under the play calling of Aaron Roderick. You know what I want, Jarom? I want A-Rod's offense to do what he has done since he took over primary play calling in 2020, which is average 36 points a game and put up 465 yards plus per game. Look at the yards per play and yards per pass. Those numbers were not close last week. Under 4 yards per play in some regards. I mean, I want the BYU offense to look like the typical Aaron Roderick offense that has taken the field over the last 3 seasons. So, I mean, I don't think 36 points is too much to ask. I don't think 465 yards plus against Southern Utah's defense is too much to ask.
And that's on average against everybody. That includes all the P5s.
That's not FCS opponents.
Against Southern Utah, it should be way more.
Well, let's examine that. Let's take a look at BYU versus FCS opponents, again, since Aaron Roderick has been the play caller. This is against FCS competition. They have scored almost 55 per game, 560 yards per game, 10.1 yards per pass, and 5.6 yards per rush.
That is where you should be in a game like this.
I know that Southern Utah might be on an uptick, and I like Coach Fitzgerald. I think he's a really good football coach, and he's got the guys motivated. This is an angry BYU team, and they should be, especially on offense, after hearing about how not well they played against Sam Houston. They should show up motivated and ultra-aggressive.
Absolutely.
So I would love to say, yeah, I expect 55 points. I don't. My expectations have been modified because of what we saw in week number 1 and some of the things we know that are happening and some injured receivers and whatnot. Yeah. But I do expect at least 36 points and at least 465 yards of total offense.
I said that I haven't, I didn't adjust my expectation based on game 1. Well, I totally did. I said 40. I would normally say 50 in this game, if not more, right? And Kalani Sitake has way more sportsmanship than I would. He pulls back the reins in the 4th quite a bit. The old BYU teams, like they would in the 3rd and 4th, they were still chucking it quite a bit. Kalani was going to run the ball quite a bit in this one. I'm interested to see not only the sort of outcome here, because there's outcome-based things that obviously in sports at this level, at this age, not for my 5 or 10-year-old, I don't care whether they win or lose, it's about the process, right? But there's a process element to this that is important for BYU. The struggle. You got to execute better on third down.
And fourth down.
Do not punt 9 times. I want to see 3 punts in this game or fewer.
The fourth down struggles continue, Jarom. 1 for 3 against Sam Houston.
3 and outs, 4. No. We need to see Aiden Robbins run the ball well. That is really important in this game. If he struggles again, it's not going to happen. I just don't see it. But if he struggles again, there's some real issues there, right? Any kind of struggle on offense in any area after 2 games with one team that has played 1 game as an FBS and now another FCS, there would be massive concern, Spencer, going into obviously Arkansas, Kansas, Cincinnati, and so on and so forth. This is a really critical game for the offense to show everybody, including themselves and the fan base and us, who are they? What are they?
Yes.
Because these are the 2 easiest games on the schedule.
I know.
It's only harder from here. So BYU's, there's some pressure to perform. They don't, the next 10 games, the offense and defense don't have to play well. They just need to win the game. We won't hold them to the same standard we are in these first 2 games. We are pulling back the screen a little bit and going, who is this team? They need to show us something Saturday. There's some pressure to do so.
I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because of the whole strange scenario of the tragedy surrounding Mata Ta'ase. That was terrible. Missing your top 2 receivers. It was game number 1.
All these new guys
Aaron
together.
Roderick said
I asked Chase about that later.
It was haywire on the offensive line, and they're not making the right blocks, and receivers are running the wrong routes. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because of game number 1 and the weird circumstantial things that were going on around the team. It's time to show up now. If they don't in game 2, then we have to reassess expectations.
Yeah, 100%. If the BYU offense doesn't put up 30+, I might be is a bowl game going to happen? How are you going to outscore Big 12 teams? How are you going to do that if you can't do it against Sam Houston and
Arkansas?
But I expect BYU to show up. I expect BYU to play really well, to restore some faith and confidence among people who talk about this. I talk about it with Chase. It's basically the following interview coming up with Chase Roberts is a PSA about why the offense is coming. I sort of turned off the neutral question asking, and it was more tell me why it's going to be fine. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So that's coming up.
I had somebody ask me, how long is the leash for Keaton Slovis? And I was like, infinite. It's infinite.
No.
It would take something, heaven forbid,
he would have
that
to
would
throw
prevent him from not being able to throw a football 10 yards down the field for him to not be the starter.
7 picks in a row.
Keaton's going to be great on Saturday. Mark it down.
Yeah.
Save this for Worst Take Wednesday in the future if I'm wrong, but I'm not going to be wrong. He's going to be great on Saturday.
If there are issues, we'll say there are issues. Come on now. Okay, topic 2. Let's specifically look at a few hypothetical scores and see if that is good enough. Producer Colton, hit us.
All right, your first hypothetical score is BYU 30, Southern Utah 7.
Okay.
Is that good enough, Spence?
A 23-point win.
I think that'd be good enough.
It's okay.
It's not enough points. But winning by 23.
And it depends on how BYU got
30.
started. Let's say BYU scores 27 in the first half, and then Kalani takes his foot off the gas.
Yes, not good enough.
It's they only kick a field goal, but they got a bunch of guys in the game. Southern Utah scores a garbage touchdown late. So let's say it's 27-0 well into the third quarter.
Yeah.
I would be okay with this. I'm not going to say, yep, BYU's back on track. I told you what I need. I need at least 36 points. I need a typical Aaron Roderick production performance from the offense.
And that's against everybody. That's not FCS.
Yes, 36. I need at least 36. I'm okay.
It's okay.
I'm okay.
It's probably under. It's probably not good enough.
30-7. I like the 70, and the defense is done lifting again.
We're not looking at just this game. We're looking at what does this mean for the season, given Sam Houston, given this game. There's pressure. Okay, well, what else you got, Cole?
All right, the next score, BYU 42, Southern Utah 17.
I'm totally okay with this. I'm 100% okay with this.
Because 42?
BYU scores 42.
Yep.
And whatever, 17 points. Southern Utah scored 17 points. I would imagine that they probably got a late touchdown.
Yeah.
It's probably 35-10 for, into the fourth quarter.
Did they block another punt and return for a touchdown? Is that how it happened?
No, I am 100% okay with this. 42-17.
I'd be just fine with that.
Who is sounding an alarm at
17.
Who's sounding an alarm at this?
Oh, how'd you give up 17?
What? No.
It's more about the offense in this game.
Yes.
The defense gave us a real inkling of what they could become.
If BYU scores 42 points,
that's enough.
They have pushed 500 yards of total offense.
Totally.
And that will be a stark contrast from the 245 yards. Oh, no, so they had 265. They had 265 against Sam Houston, right?
257.
Not even 265. Okay. 257.
It was bad.
But if they score 42 points, they're pushing 500 yards of total offense.
That's enough. Like, defensively, don't like that number per se, but I don't care as much about that.
The pace of the game is faster, too. Like, BYU has more possessions, which means they score more. Southern Utah's going to have more chances
I
to score.
thought that they cut down the clock. And by the way, the NCAA said that it's reduced the game time by 2 minutes.
No.
But Aaron Roderick and other coaches have said, well, we're getting more plays in at tempo to make up for that.
Well,
for those plays.
There are ways to accommodate the rule change.
Okay, do we have another one?
Colton Potter, what do you have for us?
Yeah, the next score, BYU 51, Southern Utah 14.
Yeah.
Would anyone have an issue with this? This is typical BYU versus FCS score.
Yeah, I would prefer like one score from Southern Utah. But again, it's about the offense. It's about the offense. Like 51, do we all just have this massive exhale as Cougar Nation?
Probably.
Yes.
If BYU scored 51 points on Saturday.
A lot of touchdowns. We saw Aiden Robbins run the rock effectively. Deion Smith in the screen game. BYU's distributing the ball in the pass game. Let's go.
How sharp does the offense look? And if you score 51 points, the offense did some great things.
Yeah, you're looking super sharp.
Keaton Slovis probably throws for at least 300 yards with that total right there.
Okay, we need a sketchy one, okay? Colton, give us the last one.
Kind of a weird one. 30-7 is a little weird.
Well, BYU 20, Southern Utah 0.
Okay, the donut is awesome, no doubt.
Yeah, we'd be like, the defense is real. Shutouts back to back.
20 stinks. No.
You have to score more than 20 points. Like, I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Our expectations going into Arkansas will be,
can we score 2 touchdowns?
Can BYU, can BYU, is the defense good enough to, like, keep them within a couple of touchdowns of Arkansas?
To stay within 2 scores? Yeah. This would be the worst 2-0 start in BYU history. Like, if BYU wins 14, best defense in the country. The schedule's soft at the front. You took care of business. That would not be enough. That was the perfect 4th scenario. Thank you.
20-0. Yeah, I love the shutout scenario.
We had not seen those scores, by the way. We did not know.
But it would be very, very hard to justify that things are okay going into Arkansas
Not okay.
if your offense has only scored a combined 34 points for the first 2 games.
And what if one of those is a scoop and score? So the offense scored 2 touchdowns.
A defensive touchdown?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, BYU's got to have more than 20.
40 plus. 40 plus. Let's go.
Give me at least 36 points. BYU scored 37 last time they played Southern Utah. Like, give me at least 36 or 37.
And that was kind of low, honestly.
Let's go.
2016 with Jamal Williams and Taysom
Jamal
Hill.
Williams. Come on.
I think Harvey Longy was rushing in that game.
Our question of the day. What does BYU's offense need to do against Southern Utah specifically
40 plus
for you to feel like the offense is back on track? At Air_Gordon12 from X says, most people say 40-plus points, and I'd assume that would come with this. But I just want to see the offensive line dominate and more pass completions in the intermediate to long range.
There were 3 for 10, as we chronicled.
Those seem to be the biggest issues against Sam Houston. With those fixed, 40-plus points shouldn't be hard. And you said 2 15-yard pass plays. I only remembered 1. Is that right?
There were, it was 2 pass, 4 rush.
2 passes of 15 or more. Man, that BYU's got to have more than that.
BYU did not have a 25-yard play in the game.
Stonely Justin answers on Instagram.
Nice.
Clean pocket, create holes for the running backs to get to the second level quickly, average 5.2 yards per play.
Very specific.
And put up more than 42 points. Is that 5.2 yards per rush? Because I want more than 5.2 yards per play.
Yeah.
I want closer to like 7 or 8 yards per play.
Yes, per play last week, BYU's 3.8, by the way.
They did not hit 4.
No.
They didn't hit 4 yards per play.
No.
It's got to be way better than